All right, so let's look at 2025 GCE all the way 2025 paper 2 question number 1. All right, so we have been told a bank pays an annual compound interest rate of 15% for deposits. The interest is added to the deposit amount annually. All right, and there's another thing that has been given to us. A share of a finance company can be bought for 60 rupees. Right. So let's look at what Roman 1 is. Amal deposits 60,000 in a bank account for 2 years. How much is the interest he receives for the first year? So how do we calculate the interest he gets for the first year? So interest is equal to PTR. So interest he receives for the first year is, what's the principal? The amount he deposits. What is the value of his fixed deposit? That is 60,000 rupees. So 60,000 into multiplied by the time period. They're asking for the first year. So for 1 year's time period, for the first year, that's time will be 1 year. 1. Time is going to be 1. And what's the interest rate? The R. What is the interest rate? It has been told to us, bank is paying an interest of 15% per annum. So the interest rate is 15%. How do you write 15% in the fraction form? 15 over 100. Then we get interest is equal to, we can cancel. The 2 zeros here get cancelled with 2 zeros over here. 600 times 15. That's going to be rupees 9,000. So Amal would receive an interest of rupees 9,000 from the bank for the first year. All right, Roman 2. What's Roman 2? You have been asked, find the total amount in Amal's bank account at the end of the 2 years. Find the total amount in Amal's bank account at the end of the 2 years. Right. So how do we do this? First, we got to calculate the total interest Amal receives. What's the total interest Amal receives? So there are multiple ways to calculate the total interest. Let me do year-wise. So we already know the interest Amal received for the first year. So what is the interest Amal received for the first year? We found that in Roman 1, that's rupees 9,000. Now let's calculate the interest Amal receives the second year. Interest Amal would receive for the second year. How do we calculate that? Once again, we write the formula PTR, P times time times interest rate. What's the P now? What is the principal of Amal's account for the second year? He has already invested 60,000. That this 9,000 get added. Why am I doing so? Because the interest scheme is compound interest. So the interest of the first year get added to the original principal. So what's the principal for the second year? That is 60,000 plus the interest for the first year, that's 9,000. So altogether it's going to be 69,000. into. What's the time period? We're calculating the interest for the second year. Just for the second year. So that's 1 year. For the 1 year's time period. Because the method that I'm using here is I'm calculating interest for each year. So we have already calculated the interest Amal receives for the first year, that's 9,000. Now I'm calculating the interest he receives for the second year. So that's for a 1 year's time period times what's the interest rate. Bank is paying an interest of 15% per annum. So that's 15 over 100. We can cancel the 2 zeros here, the 2 zeros here. We have 690 times 15. 690 times 1 is 690. 690 times 15, what would that give us when we do the multiplication? $690 times 15 is rupees 10,350. The interest is receiving for the second year is rupees 10,350. So then what is the total interest he receives from the bank? How do we calculate the total interest he receives from the bank? For that we got to add interest he received in the first year and the interest he received in the second year. So let's do that. So what's the total interest? Total interest he receives from the bank is 9,000 plus 10,350, which gives us how much is that? 19,350. So that's the total interest. At the end of the second year, what's the total amount? What's the total amount in Amal's account or in fixed deposit? How much can he take home? He can take home the 60,000 what he invested in the bank plus the extra amount the bank is giving him. What is the extra amount bank is giving him? 19,350. So altogether he can take home rupees 79,350. He can take home rupees 79,350 rupees. Right. Let's look at Roman 3. Let's see what has been told to us in Roman 3. Right. So it has been told to us a year after Amal deposits the money in the bank, Ramani buys shares of the finance company for 60,000 rupees. How many shares does she buy? So how do you do this Roman 3? So Roman 1 we are done. Roman 2 we are done. Roman 3. How do we get the answer? So what's the price? It has been told to us a share of a finance company can be bought for 60 rupees. So Ramani is spending 60,000 rupees. So number of shares Ramani purchases or Ramani buys equals rupees 60,000 is the total amount what she spends. So 60,000 divided by the price of one share. The price of one share is 60 rupees. So rupees 60. So what is 60,000 divided by 60? It is 1,000. The number of shares Ramani buys is 1,000 shares. She buys 1,000 shares of the finance company. Right. Let's look at Roman 4. At the end of that year, Ramani receives the dividends for the year and sells all the shares she owns at 75.35 rupees per share. If the total amount Ramani has in hand now is equal to the total amount in Amal's bank account after 2 years, find the dividend amount the finance company has paid per share. Alright, so how do you do this? So what they're saying is, let's take this to a new page. Right. We have been told the amount Ramani received, the total amount Ramani received. So what's the total amount? What's the total amount Ramani received? It is equal, as per them, they are saying, as per the question here, it has been told to us the total amount Ramani receives is equal to the total amount in Amal's bank account after 2 years. So total amount Ramani received is equal to total amount in Amal's bank after 2 years. Right. So then was the total amount Ramani received, total amount in Amal's bank account after 2 years. Do we know this? Do we know the value of this? Yes, we do know. Where did we calculate that? That is what we calculated in Roman 2. So just a matter of bringing the Roman 2's answer. So in Roman 2, we found out the total amount of money in Amal's bank account after 2 years is 79,350. So the amount Ramani receives is equal to rupees 79,350. So rupees 79,350. So how is Ramani getting this 79,350? To get this 79,350, two components are getting together. What are the two components? Ramani receives the dividend. So she is receiving dividend. So one is to make this total amount of Ramani, two things are getting together. What is it? Dividend she received, dividend Ramani received, plus was the other thing, she owns, she also sells, she sells all the shares she owns at 75.35. So what are the two components to make the total amount? Dividend Ramani received plus sales proceeds. By selling the shares is equal to 79,350 rupees. Right. So what's the dividend Ramani received? That hasn't been told to us. So let's consider that as, since it's dividend, let me use the letter D, or just say dividend, plus what is the sales proceeds? By selling shares, how much is she earning? How much is she getting to her hand? Now we have been told she's selling all the shares. How many shares does she own? Or how many shares did she own? She owned 1,000 shares, right? Where did we find that? In Roman 3 we found out it. In Roman 3 we found out Ramani bought 1,000 shares. Now what is she doing? She's selling all the shares. So how much can she earn by selling shares? 1,000, that's the number of shares, times, for how much is she selling a share? She's selling a share at 75.35. So rupees 75.35 equals 79,350. So the dividend plus, what is 1,000 times 75.35? Just a matter of shifting the decimal point of 75.35 thrice. So what do we end up with? We end up with 75,350 is equal to 79,350. So the dividend she received plus the sales proceeds is equal to 79,350. So now how do we find out what's the dividend she received? How much dividends did she receive from the finance company? Just a matter of solving the equation here. So dividends she received is equal to 79,350. This plus 75,350 we put to the other side. When we put it to the other side, what does it become? It becomes subtraction minus. We're solving the equation 75,350. So dividends she received is equal to, when we subtract, we end up with rupees 4,000. Now 4,000 is the total dividend she received. From how many shares? From 1,000 shares. For 1,000 shares, she got 4,000 as dividend. But the question here is, how much is the company paying? How much dividend is the finance company paying per share? So how do you find that? Dividend per share is equal to rupees 4,000 divided by what? The number of shares Ramani had. How many shares did Ramani have? She had 1,000 shares. So 4,000 divided by 1,000. That gives us rupees 4. What does that mean? This finance company has paid 4 rupees per share as dividend.